America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. It is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
We've got people standing up all over the world against police brutality. And I'm here to tell you one absolute fact, one very true thing, that if it were not for prohibition, things would not be this out of control. Let that sink in for a second. If it weren't for the fact that an officer who may be teetering on his mental health after dealing with the community and his supervisors, I gotta hand it to you, cops. It's gotta be difficult. I couldn't do it. Right? So we're gonna do so we're dealing with cops who are mentally unstable. And that is not an opinion, that is a statistical fact right now. Okay? And we are allowing them to approach somebody standing on a corner just because they match the description of somebody who may or may not be using illicit drugs. Now, let's just ignore the fact that some of the legal drugs that they could have in their possession may be miles more dangerous than the illicit ones, but they're still going to be thrown in cages. And this is a world we don't want to live in. And this is why we must start speaking out and being honest and using the right verbiage when we're talking about these people. It is not a raid. It is a breaking and entering. It is a home invasion. Okay? It's not an arrest. It's a kidnapping. You did not commit a crime. You had a substance on you. A crime, children, is when you make a victim of somebody else, right? Don't hurt, don't steal, don't kill. Unless you're a cop, soldier, or a tax collector. This isn't okay. So if we had not been giving the officers the excuse to approach our neighbors through these drug laws, if the generations before us weren't so easily convinced by the propaganda that they were doing something good for their society somehow by putting guns in the faces of people who, let's even say you have an addiction issue. The gun in your face is not going to fix it. In fact, it's going to make you want to go back to that substance more because now you're freaking the fuck out, right? We've been doing this wrong for years, and you know it's so laid bare in the age of the internet. With all the live footage, I mean, we've got a duty right now, cannabis community. We've got a duty right now to remind the protesters are representatives. I always talk about the email floods. Email your representative once a week. Copy and paste the same damn email until they respond to you without an auto reply. And tell them, we need to let the powers that be right now know, and our community, the reality of the fact that there's a quick way. I mean, a real fucking quick way to lower the police brutality epidemic, to flatten that police epidemic or police brutality epidemic curve. You're talking about flatten the curve for the economy and corona and this, that, and the other. Let's flatten the curve on the police brutality epidemic. And the only way, quickest way for us to do that is to remind everybody, our community, our representatives, that if it were not for these archaic drug laws, our officers would not have the excuse to approach our nonviolent brothers and sisters and pull some bullshit "I smell weed" excuse out of their back pocket just to intimidate and harass them. You want to start putting an end to the police brutality problem? You end Prohibition today, right now. And not only do you need to end Prohibition, you need to lift all these ridiculous state regulations where you have to be a millionaire or know somebody who knows somebody who's banging somebody's sister in order to even get into the industry. Do you know you have to pay a $2.5 million, I'm getting away with myself after this Ash Deep story here. You have to pay $250 to the state of Maryland, even to be considered for a grower's license. Patients are not allowed to grow, and if they do, they will be thrown in jail without question. If you pay the state that $250,000, they may or may not approve you. And guess what? You don't get approved. You just made a generous donation in the amount of $250,000 to the state of Maryland, who will still put you in jail if they catch you growing weed in your basement because you didn't get the licensure. A state that only allows X amount of people to grow. It's through this whole permission slip system. Okay, that's what every state that has legalized looks like. Legalization is a farce. A full repeal of Prohibition is the only thing that I will accept. The only thing that you should accept. And the first step this country needs to take in ending the police brutality epidemic. It's disgusting because it's so easy. It's so blatantly simple on how to fix it. 86% of our prison population is comprised of victimless, nonviolent offenders. 46% of those are in on drug charges. Some are hard drugs, some are not hard drugs. The ones who are in for harder drugs and may be battling addiction withdrawal have no medical care. They're going to come out of there with a chip on their shoulder, a shit ton of resentment, and who wouldn't after being tortured and denied medical care? They're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, and that's when they get violent. That's when they start robbing folks. That's when they say, "Fuck the world, I'm going to do what I want because the world has shit on me my entire life." Do we want to encourage these people to be more violent? Just because they're having a hard time and picked up the wrong substance? How many times you had a hard week and you pick up a case, you binge drink for a week because that guy at work pissed you off too much or whatever. I don't care what it is. We're all human. We all use crutches in times of emotional distress. And that crutch doesn't even have to be a substance sometimes. But when you're down that rabbit hole, a concrete box with no way to put any focus on your mind, body, and soul, especially your mental health, that is not going to help you. In fact, that's just adding fuel to the fire that we don't want to add. That's poking and prodding at somebody until they do become violent. It's time we start passing that compassion, right? No judgment. Facts. Look at what's in front of you. Analyze it. And say and do what's best.
I'm the Commander-in-Chief, and I approve this message. Visit platoon420.com today and take the pledge. I will stand tall in the face of tyranny for the best interest of myself and my community. I denounce the archaic drug laws that have made victims of people they were written to protect, and I will not support any legislation that regulates what a person puts in their body.